Okay, so I clearly have a lot of cleaning to do on the bottom half, but if your layers don't have as many components and you're ready to start working, you have a clean outline, then I will show you how to do that really quick so you can jump in. I'm going to go ahead and hide my leg and arms. I don't want to hide my arms. Let's see. Maybe I'll separate those out into a new layer group. Because those have been cut out. All right. So now I know what areas I need to worry about, at least up here, and smooth, especially in the nose. So how can I do this? Well, there's a few things I can do. First of all, I can use my Move tool with Layer Select, and I can play with, just like we did with the landscape, my levels and my hue saturation on each layer. So I want to brighten up the midtones a little bit. Midtones are always safe, and then maybe deepen the shadows slightly. Kind of work with this eye and that lighting. Same with this tip. Of course, the more layers you have, the longer this takes. And I'm just doing levels first, then I will adjust colors. But I have to see kind of what the potential is for these colors first. You want to get something that's workable. There we go. And then you might just find things that you can erase. Shouldn't be there to begin with, aren't really helping. Notice I still have only hard edges. But now I'm going to work on all of their levels. Brighten the highlights there a little bit, not too much. And maybe even limit the shadows a tiny bit. And then the arm. These little adjustments make a big difference in how believable everything is. And this is light and dark. This has nothing to do with the color. And I always play with the mid-tone slider first. And I'm using this more for that back ridge than anything else. All right, now how do I want to blend one texture into another? Well, this is a really nice, simple place to show that. These scales going into these scales, which are very different. These are wet, these are dry, these are small, these are larger. First thing I'm going to do is hold down Command, select this edge of that layer, which overlaps, and then I'm going to use a soft eraser, 0% hardness, a little bit bigger, maybe even take the opacity down just a little bit, and then just really hit it at the edge so that it blends more. Once I have a nice soft edge where it's believable, and I'll know when I go too far, then I can go to a lower opacity should I want to. But I like to do it about like that. And I can blend it in here as well. And then I can blend this layer underneath in as well, without removing any material where I don't have an overlap. So for instance, for this, I might need to actually remove quite a bit of material, because I don't want to show a different crease in armor in the scales, right? All right. So you can kind of see how that works. Now, let me do it here, and then I'll show you where clone stamp comes in. So here I'm going to soften as much as I can these transitions. Before they get weird. And if a new layer kind of pops up, I should be able to erase that back as well at these lower opacities. So you do the practical direct adjustments first that you feel are necessary. And for this layer, I feel it's necessary to actually cut these cleanly out, these horns. And I'll show you how I can make them more severe in a bit, more sturdy looking. But that's why I needed something there. So let me avoid a big section there, and delete it out. Okay. All right, now here is the great kind of equalizer tool that works for everything. But you want to make sure you have access to all of your material thus far. So if there's anything you can trim by directly adjusting that layer, anything you can adjust with color or with levels, you want to use that tool first. Now, I haven't really decided what levels I want overall on this in terms of color, but I am narrowing in on the lighting and the final approach. And that's getting easier and easier. Okay, so that tool, it's the first time we're using it, it's called the clone stamp tool. And the way I would like you to use it, I'm going to save this, is to go to the very top of your layers, whether it's a layer group or an individual layer, create a new layer above everything. And we're going to name that layer in capitals clone stamp. And that's the only layer I want you to clone stamp on, for a lot of reasons. Okay, on this layer, I'm going to use the clone stamp tool, which is 2 above the eraser. And it's not the pattern stamp, it's the clone stamp, the one on top. Under my settings, I'm going to set it to sample from all layers. And then for my size and hardness, it's similar to my transition eraser, where I want it pretty soft and fairly large. It depends what I'm targeting. This looks pretty good. So only about a 45% hardness. In terms of opacity, just to show you how it works and to fill in major areas that need content, like here, I'm going to keep it at 100%. Okay, the way this tool works is it's going to sample from all layers, and I'm only going to use it on this layer. It's very dangerous to use it on your actual content layers. And I hold down Option, and it changes my painting cursor into a bullseye. So if I wanted to copy these pixels, I would hold down Option and then click. And then it would bullseye that eye, and I could paint those pixels anywhere I want. Right? But it's on its own layer, so I'm not overwriting any pre-existing pixels. Now, why is this useful? Well, if I want to take this texture here, and I want to extend it down the nose, I can do that. And your selection travels with you. The problem with that is you have to not go further than where you want to select. If I want to take this pattern and extend this down, I can do that. This is all at 100%. This is all pretty rough and tumble, but it's all done on a layer on top, so I'm not losing any real content. It is very copy-pasty because I'm doing it at 100%. But I'm just trying to get a base layer in, especially to fill in some of this space I don't have filled yet. Don't worry if you go outside your lines. I'll show you how you fix that. That's another reason why we clone stamp in a new layer. It takes some practice to get used to how it operates. But once you get the hang of it, a very, very helpful tool. And you can see why it's important not to have a lot of content that you don't really want when you start using this, because then it will just repeat itself over and over again. Now I can use this on all layers, and I'm kind of blending them together and making them my own. So I have a few different colors going on in this nose, a few different types of scales, and that's fine as long as I can kind of make it make sense rationally. All right, so now you can see the big difference clone stamp makes on that head just by turning on and off that layer. So clone stamp, very, very helpful. It's going to help transition these other elements as well. For instance, this neck. But now I'm closer. Now I don't need to replace it exactly with what I have. I might want to lower my opacity on my clone stamp once I've softened some of these edges. And you need to be mindful, as always, of the anatomy, of where overlaps should happen. So I can extend the kind of shadow of this neck frill, but then I might want to soften its edge even more as it starts to transition. And then I'm probably going to want to make it less opaque. So now I'm just kind of softening that edge and that shadow. Same thing here. Same thing with the bone texture on the inside of the bone here, but then on the outside of the bone I'll want to keep it sharp. And like a lot of the things we've done, it's a little bit like glazing and painting. We're working with transparency now, fine touches. And you don't want anything to look obviously copied from anywhere else. And in that way, using a low opacity clone stamp really creates a new color, a new texture. So if I want to take a little bit of that harshness from the nose, I'm just going to copy this different scale, color, and texture over it slightly. If I want some of these bluish scales just to have a little bit of impact in and around the eye, the low opacity clone stamp can do that for me. So this really is kind of fine-tuned work. And it can be very rewarding. So I want to take the texture of that back fin and kind of extend it up into the neck here. I can do that. I don't need to worry too much about going outside the lines, but I do need to worry if I interrupt a crease, and I need to make sure that crease is still there. And then I can finish off this arm and get the shape I want just by using clone stamp. So where it was just gray before, now it's filled with scales. Then with the chest,